Hey there. So today we're going to talk about security controls. Yeah. If you're studying for the Security Plus or the SSCP or the CISA or some other security certification, or you're taking a security course, or you're just involved in business meetings where people are talking about controls, you got to know what they are, what people mean when they're describing different controls. So that's what we're going to break down in this video. We're going to talk about security controls and what they all are. So when you're designing security for an organization, you put in controls to detect or prevent or to counteract or otherwise limit the security risks to that organization. So you use a control to do that. And controls can be defined in two ways. It's either based on how they're implemented or it's based on when they act, right? So let's talk about the first way, how controls are implemented. So there are three ways controls get implemented. First way is technical. So a technical control, sometimes called a logical control. These are the hardware and software that are put in place to allow access or disallow access to a resource. So an example of that, say, is a firewall, right? Firewall prevents people from outside our network coming into our network and looking at our stuff. That's a technical control of some kind. Administrative controls, number two. An administrative control is like a policy, a security policy, or a guideline or a standard. It's something an organization says, this is our policy, we expect you to follow it. It's something implemented by management. That's an administrative control. And the third one is a physical control. And physical controls are things that you can actually touch in the real world. So that could be things like security guards or video surveillance systems or man traps, right? Things in the physical world are what a physical control are all about. All right, so we got those, but now we've got controls also described based on how they act, right? And these fit together with how they're implemented. They all mesh together, so don't get too hung up that there's all these different categories. It's just how they are thought about. Okay, so on when the control acts side, well, a few different ways. First of all, there are preventive controls, and a preventive control, like it sounds, is designed to prevent a security incident from happening, right? So an example of that might be someone leaves our organization and we disable their account, right? That way they can't come back, can't log back in because they're not part of our organization anymore. That prevents that from happening. That's a preventative control. Next is detective controls. And a detective control is meant to detect a security incident while it's happening. So for example, a bad guy is attacking your network. Your intrusion detection system picks up on that, realizes something is happening, that it's detected it. That's a detective control, right? Third kind is a deterrent control. And a deterrent control is something that tries to convince somebody not to perform some type of action, right? So an example of that would be like locks, right? If you come up to a desk and the desk is locked, well, you know that somebody has something in that desk they don't want other people getting at, so it's locked. But if you really had to, you could probably get around that desk lock, right? And criminals say the same thing about household locks, right? Household locks are really just a deterrent. They can get around them if they have to, but that's what a deterrent control is. It tries to convince you not to take a certain action. Next, there's a compensating control. And a compensating control is a second control that's put in place to help mitigate the residual risk of another control. So an example of that might be, I described that we disable accounts earlier. Well, maybe in addition to disabling accounts, in a preventative control, maybe we also periodically review all of our accounts, right? We do this review every month or every quarter, and we look to make sure that everybody's who is enabled is supposed to be enabled and they're in the right groups and whatnot. Well, that's a form of a compensating control. Last one is a corrective control. And a corrective control is meant to correct things or get back to normal after a security incident has already happened. So an example of a corrective control is something like backups, right? Someone managed to get ransomware into your network, and as a result, you've got a bunch of machines that are now encrypted, can't be used anymore. What do you got to do? You got to wipe them, reimage them, and restore the data from backup. That's a corrective control. So they're really not that complicated, but they can become very complicated. And if you're interested in learning more about controls, there is a NIST publication. It's special publication 853. If you Google NIST 853, you'll find it's called Security and Privacy Controls for Federal Information Systems and Organizations. It's US based, obviously, but if you go look in that document, they got just tons of stuff listed, and it's kind of interesting to look at how they've got those all broken down and listed up. So if learning about controls is important, that might be something you want to take a look at, skim through it, maybe take a look at some of the information that's in there because it might be useful. So there, now when you come into a bunch of people and they're talking about implementing their compensating controls for something, now you know what they're talking about. Alrighty, I hope that was useful to you or at least entertaining. Have yourself a great weekend.